All right, all right, all right. Welcome. Happy Tuesday. My name is 12 Gauge. If this is your first time to my channel, I hope that you hear something that interests you, something that gives you a little mental clarity. If you have any questions that are going on about any of the cases that are discussed here, please do remember that everything that's discussed here is either opinion or it's something that we've research, gotten knowledge from, and this includes all my guests that I may have on my panel. Um, Tonight we have a very special guest again. We have Mr. Sergeant Friday, and let me bring him up. Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, there you go. My microphone is now on. Mr. 12 Gauge, how might you be?
I am doing very well. How are you, sir?
Well, I can't complain. I never complain when another. Well, I do complain, but yeah, I'm fine.
All right, great to hear you're doing well. Welcome back to the panel.
Why, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Last time I didn't get to really ask you a lot of questions. We just kind of dove right into it. So I'm going to ask you a little bit of questions about yourself so my subscribers can know a little bit about you if they've never heard you on a panel or they've ever never really heard you explain things. If you could tell them a little bit about your style, a little bit about who you are and what made you stop going to some of the other panels that you used to frequent.
All right. Well, that's a heck of a big question. Let's see. So, who am I? Well, one thing about me that makes me different. I am on the spectrum of autism. So and I didn't know this until I was 34 years old, and I had gone through a divorce, a contentious divorce, where because of some of my past, and there was crimes in my past, nothing against women or children or anything like that, no violence, but there were crimes, and they were trying to use those against me in a custody case. So during that process, when I was with a psychologist, or I forget what you call them, psychiatrist, whatever the court appointed, that's where it was this pointed out to me that I was on the spectrum.
Okay.
And what does that mean? And like, there's a case now where there's a Sebastian Rogers, I believe his last name is.
Mm-hmm.
He's missing, and people keep yelling autistic kid, autistic kid. In a nutshell, what it means to be on the spectrum is that my interaction with emotion, my realization of emotion, sometimes proper etiquette, most times proper etiquette in groups and crowds, and how you talk to people based on the adult standards normies have put in place, are not in tune with others. Numerous times women can be actively hitting on me. I don't pick it up. I don't know what that is. Now, not to say that I'm not a virgin, obviously, but there are a lot of things I don't pick up on, those cues, the emotional cues. I don't cry when a pet dies or a loved one dies. To me, it's the natural cycle of life, and I see it as something to look forward to. Now, I don't want it to happen any sooner than it has to, but
Right.
it is our journey, right?
Right.
So I see the logical parts in things, and I try to see is the truth in things. The truth matters the most to me of anything. I don't like deceitful behavior or behavior that's conning people or tricking people, or I just don't go for any of that. I have a hard time wondering how people can love cats and dogs more than each other. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why we love a dog more than we do our neighbor, but we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really disgusting. And I think the one thing that offends me the most, maybe because I have Asperger's, is that the simplest way to fix everything is just tell the truth, and nobody does it on all kinds of stuff, but mainly on things that really matter. Nobody tells the truth, or they avoid the truth.
Okay.
Right? So there's lots of ways not to tell it, but they avoid it, and that for me as a person is just, it's abhorrent. I think we're all to a level of we're all programmed by the system we live in, and the programming we got is defective. Okay, I'm included in that. Okay, I'm included in that. However, I at least recognize it and try to share that with other people. And I get a lot of pushback. And the main pushback I get is nobody's going to want to do that. Nobody's going to want to do that. Well, if people treated Alex Baldwin to the equivalency of how Alec Baldwin was treating his fans and people in parking garages and his daughter on the phone and his wives, if we treated him appropriately based on his own behavior, that woman would never have been shot and killed on that Rust set. Therefore, we're responsible. See, that's the one part that none of us ever want to talk about. And that's kind of what makes me maybe somewhat more, by some people, liked and loved, and by many people hated. Because that's the truth. The truth is, many things that happen in our society are because we, the people, do nothing but yak about it, get outraged about it, and then entertain ourselves with it. How morbid is that?
Do you believe that maybe sometimes, you know, whenever you're honest with somebody, it makes them uncomfortable because they can't help but look at themselves in the mirror, like you said, you're very truthful about things. Like if somebody were to ask you, "Hey, does this dress make me look fat?" Would you be able to say no, it doesn't if it does? I mean, are
No,
you
I couldn't. I would have to say the truth.
okay? So you'd be like, "Yeah, it makes you look huge."
I wouldn't say, I don't know. It depends on how well I knew the girl,
Yeah,
right? But women have dated me, many women, and they usually date. Here's what happens with women and me. They date me, and then obviously shit like that is how I am, and it doesn't last. But they always come back,
right, right,
right? They don't get hit, they don't get verbally abused, they don't get ridiculed, robbed. There's no drugs, there's no gamblers, none of that with
right.
me. Okay, but yeah, I will. You either learn what you should or shouldn't ask me, but if you really want the truth, ask me and I'll tell you. I mean, it's just kind of like programmed into me. I can't help it.
Well, I mean
Right?
that kind of quality is hard to find these days. It really is. I mean, it took me a while to get to that point. When I was in my addiction, I was a habitual liar. I didn't want to be honest. I didn't want to be accountable. I didn't want any of that stuff to go on. And as I got sober, um, I became the other side of the coin, so to speak. Now I'm brutally honest. Now I cannot lie about something. If you're going to ask me about it, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I try to spare your feelings by saying in a softer way, but in the end, I'm still going to let you know what maybe you don't want to hear. And I think that in this true crime community, sometimes there are creators that spare others' feelings in their chats when they should be more honest and transparent versus trying to be liked.
Let me just say that people are confused with the truth, and I'll
Yeah.
give you a short example. I also was an addict, like you had claimed. I was a crackhead, and I fucking did all kinds of things. The drugs gave me the power to lie. Okay, doesn't mean I can't lie. I always could lie. Lying is not. It's not. I'm not incapable of doing it. I get it.
Right.
I just don't. Right. But when it comes to recovery, they can tell you all the things they want about God, higher powers, and all the little processes they want to talk about inside of those 12 steps. But there's only one thing that gets you sober and keeps you sober: honesty. That's it. And it's to yourself. Let me be clear. It's honesty to yourself. And I'll ask you this, and just give me the first thing that comes to the top of your head. Your first answer is just spit it right out. When you were doing drugs and committing a crime or doing harm to another person, were you aware of it?
No.
You were not aware you were hurting other people to get your drugs. You weren't aware you were stealing something. You weren't aware
Not
that you were.
not until they told me. I mean, up
With me, I
until
was
that
aware.
point, huh?
So let's just give an example. So if you punched someone in the face and took their money, you weren't aware that that was wrong when you did it.
Well, of course. But I'm
Okay.
talking about the other example that I would give would be like I know that it would be wrong to hurt somebody's feelings, lie to them, steal their hearts, whatever, but I still would do it without a conscience. I would talk myself out of it.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is the drug gives you the ability to justify the wrong that you're doing, but you are aware that what you're doing is wrong. Make no
Okay.
mistake.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Of course.
and this goes consistently across the board with all addicts. This isn't that moral compass exists in all of us, and nobody can say it doesn't. Okay, it does. It just simply does. You know, when you're stealing that pair of sneakers to go trade in for a dime bag, right?
Yeah.
You know what you're doing is a crime, right?
Of course. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the drugs gave myself and others and millions of other people with addictions the excuse to go ahead and do that anyway, right? We label the drugs made me do it. Basically, that's and I'm in fairness, I think I'm describing myself, but I think that applies to a lot of addicts.
Yeah. Of course.
So
Because
when you get
you,
sober, if you want to stay sober, be honest to yourself in all things,
yeah.
and you should be fine. And if you're honest to yourself, that means you're going to be honest to others,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you can't have it one way and not the other. I imagine you could. I imagine there are people that are honest with themselves and they accept the fact that they're robbing, hurting, and pillaging that they're the county, you know, and they live with it.
Right.
I just can't. I'm not going to do harm to others and live with it. I'm not cut out that way.
Well, the fact that you left these other channels, is there any other reason that possibly you
It
quit
isn't so
going
much
up
that
with these
I
channels?
left. It's not so much that I left. There's a creators, rather than put them by name, a lot of them there's like, for instance, one guy talking about seeing Ethan's face pissed on. To give that man any attention as a viewer shows an illness, I believe, in the viewer.
Mm-hmm.
A creator like that should not exist in true crime at all. The viewer shouldn't tolerate it, nor should the victims of the crime. Just imagine what's being said about a young man that was slaughtered, right? During the commission of a horrific crime. And then you got some YouTube goofball talking about, I can see him being peed on by 3 different people right on his face,
That's
right?
terrible.
To me, that's
Terrible.
off limits. Or when people make things up to make their point, where they come up with stuff like, they just create things out of whole cloth, like they're seeing stuff in reflections, they're hearing things in videos, they're all of this crazy stuff. Or they're using unconfirmed data to come to a conclusion. And then they're making topics out of that, and they're entertaining the true crime community. They're not educating the true crime community. They're not helping people understand things that are important to understand, like the jury process is important to understand, what a judge does is important to understand, what these charges mean, why they're written that way. There's a billion things to understand that are legitimate topics. But this idea that some girl said that she knew at 10 in the morning that these victims were victims is a lie. There's no evidence to support that. People trying to connect the Banfield and all of these other different videos and images and sounds have limited, in most cases, if at all, any relevance to the case at all. And that's where the entertainment comes in. So is this really true crime, or is it true crime entertainment?
Good
Right?
point.
Because that's what people are doing here. And
Well,
if it's entertainment, I don't object to it at all. It's fair game. But you've got to let the viewer know that you're here to entertain them. And so some of your topics may not be based in any fact.
that makes sense. And that goes, I mean, since we're talking about the Idaho 4, I guess we'll just go ahead and jump right in it. Because as you know, I have different streams and podcasts and stuff on my channel that I've kind of dove into the part that you were talking about as far as the legal process and how to interview versus interrogation and things like that. And one of the things that you and I have spoke about in the past a little bit is about what the title says, the 911 call. Um, let's kind of go back and discuss that 911 call based on what the facts we do have versus the theories that are out there. The facts are what that you recall. What facts do we have as a community? What do we have in place that has been told to us that is factual that you can recall?
The only facts that I'm aware of that we can say are facts, and here, can we clarify what a fact is?
Sure.
when given a puzzle, the pieces in front of you, okay, are facts. Now, it's only when you go to assemble the puzzle with those given facts that you find out whether all those pieces make up that puzzle or not. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So initially, when you're told that a 911 call was made and that it was made for an unconscious person, and this is confirmed by the authorities, those are a grouping of facts that you have to accept for what they say. End of story. Now, you could stand back and say, well, but there were 4 dead people in that. True, that's true. But when you look at the 911 call, the limited information you have gives you limited things and questions to ask. Were the bodies downstairs? Were they in Zena's room? Were they considered unconscious at first glance when someone made a 911 call? It's possible. For us to say that's impossible is not true. We don't know that to be impossible. We know that that if you see people down on the floor, right? One of your friends, that in your panic you could have misspoke. You could have actually thought that they were unconscious, right? So there's one explanation to the data they gave us. The other explanation would be that upon discovery of the bodies, I suspect, and I could be wrong, obviously, but I suspect Dylan fainted. And the initial call was because of that. They called that in. They needed help for her, realizing that the people they were observing in the room were already deceased. I think that's also a potential explanation of that phone call. Okay. Anything else outside of those groups of people and those few situations, anything else to me, unless it includes the exact same fact base, if you add to that, now you're going into conspiracy theory. There's no basis to support it.
Well, clarify this if it's incorrect, but when they made the 911 call, it was stated that it was from a roommate's phone, correct? They didn't necessarily say which roommate. They said it was from a roommate's phone. So based on what you just said, if it was Dylan, if she was the one that found the bodies, it would have made sense that she would have fainted, correct?
Within that fact set, that limited fact set of the call, I suspect so. I suspect that's a fair possibility. We don't know.
Right, exactly. Right?
But it does fit the fact
educated guessing. You know,
it's an educated guess.
1 + 1 equals 2, right? Because we know 1 + 1 = 2. So therefore,
that's not always true, though.
Okay.
You want to see how it's not true?
Well,
1 + 1 and a baby makes 3. Wait, 1 + 1 and a baby makes 3. So 1 + 1 can make 3. Okay. So I know that sounds crazy, or maybe it might sound weird to people, but that is a true fact. 1 + 1 can equal 3 when you're talking reproduction.
Of course.
Okay.
Well, let's welcome one of our chatters in the chat room. We got somebody in there. Her name is Georgia. So if you see her ask questions or anything that you want to answer, just jump on in. She asked, the problem is we don't know who was unconscious. That is true.
That's correct. And we don't know that they made an error in judgment, or they were panicked, or if in fact, for instance, Dylan passed out. When they found that, when that young man, she called someone over, we do know that, and that person helped open the door, is what we're being told, right? That person more likely made the 911 call. They're not giving us the name of who made the call. They're trying to protect the identity of that particular witness.
Of course.
And so there are only a few explanations to that. And rather than saying it's a conspiracy, the cops are lying, they're making it up, and people go off on these tangents, attacking these facts, which are only fact because there's no contradicting data. You see, a fact is a fact when it can't be contradicted. However, a fact is not written in stone and can be contradicted with contradicting data. And when you deal with stuff like this is where I agree with Get a Clue. People don't apply logic to it. They apply emotion to it. They apply feelings to it. They apply what they believe to it. And there's no room for that when you're trying to understand the factual situation in front of you.
You know, I felt that way too. Whenever you hear people, whether it be on other panels or whether it be people in the chat room that you read, you know, there's a lot of emotional attachment to it. And I get it. I get how, you know, you might have gone through a trauma of that extent, or maybe you're recollecting, you're reenacting something in your brain that you never grieved, or, you know, any kind of emotional attachment to this IDAHO4 case. That's why it's worldwide, and that's why so many people want to talk about it, because they attach their emotion to it. They're young kids that were murdered in their prime in the middle of the night, and they're trying to figure out not only why, but who, and hold somebody accountable. Those three things are probably what more that people want out of all this stuff, is those three things.
Right.
And the fact that we don't know a lot of the why, the what, and we're being told this is the who, but still the evidence that we're being shown is not the whole puzzle
Right.
piece. So
And,
therefore
and
it still makes it difficult to put faith in that this is the who. So therefore you
but
got to
but you here's what I want to say is there should never be faith or belief placed in any information ever.
well, of course.
Okay. And that's what drives people's emotions. The idea that you have faith, I'll give you an example. It is not an act of faith when you turn your door handle and the door opens. When you go to your car and turn the key and it starts, that is not an act of faith.
What is when
That
you have an old
that is
car?
an act. Listen, that's an act of knowledge. You're acting upon knowledge that every time you've gotten that vehicle and turned the key, it started. There's no faith, there's no belief, there's no spirituality in that. It's a
Hey,
fact, right?
have you ever, I'm not trying to cut you off, but listen, I think this is funny. Have you ever had an old beater of a car that you did say a prayer and that you were hoping that that damn thing would start because you're late for work? Have you ever done that?
Well, yeah, you anticipate it to start, but again, that's the problem where we have been. This is part of our programming, so listen to this carefully.
Okay.
We have been programmed in mass to believe in things and information, and the problem with that is belief releases chemicals in the brain, and belief itself is an act of accepting something irrespective of the facts supporting it, irrespective of the facts disproving it. Belief allows you to accept it as real. If
Okay.
you believe all cops are corrupt, I don't want to have a discussion with you about cops being corrupt. However, if you have a criminal case where the cops behaved and were corrupt in their behavior, I will discuss that case with the facts that show that corruption. But I will not take that information and blanketly say cops are all corrupt. Not to say that there isn't massive amounts of corruption. I think there is. However, unless it's shown to me, I do not label every policeman as corrupt. It's irresponsible. It's not fair. And I don't believe in things I can't prove. When it comes to man's world, I believe there's a God. Do I believe there's some invisible being up? Yeah, I do. Is there proof that? No, there's not. Right? You can
Right.
argue there's no such thing as God. You can argue that, but the point is, neither one of us can prove our case. That's what belief is for.
Right.
Not
Well, let me ask you this, getting back to the case a little bit. Um, so we we both kind of discussed the 911 call on what we know about it, because there's not a lot to be known. They didn't release it, like Georgia said. Is she doesn't understand what the purpose of them not releasing it, since they do have, um, they have the person in custody who they believe is the perp. What would it hurt to release that 911 call?
there's a gag order on the case.
Okay.
Okay, and whether that gag order it is what it is. There's a gag order. Period. End of story. That's a fact. And so because of that, most of this information is not going to be given to you. And the best that you have is the documentation and the motions and the counter motions being presented to the court. That's the most amount of information that you can derive an understanding of on this case. That's it. Because the gag order will not give you and will not be lifted anytime soon. And so you have to accept that for what it is. So how do you glean the process that Mr. Kohlberger is going through? And you can only glean that through the information that they're releasing to us.
Right.
And then to jump off and say they're doing this to protect the FBI, they're doing this to protect. You could think that all you want, but you can't prove it. So there's no sense in even bringing it up. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course it does. You know, there's people that get into heated discussions and they start character assassinating them, you know, themselves and other people, and they start doxing them and they start calling them names and all this other stuff in behind their belief system. Hey, that's one of the pretenses why wars are fought, is behind people's beliefs. You know,
look how they got us to believe that we should have attacked Iraq.
Yes,
that was a lie.
Weapons of mass destruction, right?
Right. And the thing is people don't learn from these things, and they still like politics is an argument of belief. It's like arguing religion.
Yes.
A Muslim believes in what he believes, and a Jew believes in what they believe, and there's no sense having that discussion. Why can't you just get along and leave that alone?
Well, because, you know, they have to fight about it, because, you know, it's like the biggest guy on the block, you know, want to prove his point because he's been around longer or whatever, you know.
Well, you know, Georgia says, I do think the lack of information causes people to have many doubts about the case, but I'm not so sure those doubts don't exist because they're not being planted. So there's a lot of information about the case. The last time I was here, I laid out exactly what Ann Taylor's doing. It's clear what their line of defense is going to be with no ambiguity. Her filings, her discovery demands tell you exactly what she is going after. And what she's going to do and what she's trying to do is get the data from the cops and use that very same data to show it wasn't Brian Kohlberger. That's her defense in a nutshell. Exactly what she's trying to do. She's not going to drop somebody out of a parachute and say, yeah, I saw Brian at 7-Eleven. No. His alibi is the police work that accused him. That's exactly the angle she's taking. And I agree with her.
Well, look at I think technology has ruined a lot of the potential for people to have there wouldn't be need for gag orders if there wasn't so much division in the country. I believe that, and that's just my personal belief. But if they didn't make things so politically minded, or, you know, you had to believe this or you're wrong, or, you know, this, that, and the other. But back in the days before the internet, we read about the trial, but it came in a newspaper. We heard it on the evening news. We didn't sit there and say, no, that reporter's full of shit. There's no way that could be what the judge said, or there's no way that's what evidence they got, and the cops are wrong, and this and that and the other. It's almost like we put so much emphasis on the guy that created the crime. We elevate them to be some kind of victim instead of focusing on the real victims, the 4 people that lost their lives.
That truly does happen.
You know, the 4 people back in the day, if somebody died, you didn't focus on the bank robber that shot them. You didn't say, well, let's dig into their past and let's dig into this and let's dig into that. No, you focused on the teller who lost her life, who was a single mother working, you know, 3 jobs to feed her kids and this and that. And you memorialized the victim. You didn't make the person who created the crime the victim. And I think that's a lot of the problem.
I think,
you know, I could be wrong.
In relation to Georgia, is it Georgia?
Georgia, yeah.
Lack of information leads to conspiracy theories, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. And the reason it doesn't naturally lead to that. People take it there, but they only are taking it there. Oh, I don't know what the hell they think they're doing. But you need not have a conspiracy theory. When you look at a frozen shock phase, we can all interpret that any way we want. But the bottom line is that's the statement made by a witness, and that's exactly what it means, what was said. Now, question what she did after. Went in her room, locked the door. That tells me the frozen shock phase then jumped from frozen to fight or flight, and she got out of there. Locked herself in the room. It's legitimate now to ask, why did they wait 8 hours to call the police? Right? Her actions demonstrate that question's legitimate. It isn't drama. It isn't conspiracy theory. It's not victim shaming. But if you're frozen shock phase, and then you react to that, and she did react to that. She told us. She went in the room, closed the door, and locked the door. Closed and locked the door. She responded to the frozen shock phase. Therefore, the question now needs to be, what did you do for the 8 hours? We don't know. We won't know until there's a trial, right? We don't know the answer. So can we sit here and theorize a billion different things that she could have done? Sure. But we don't know them to be true. So why
do you
does
believe that they were cleaning up drugs? Do you believe that they were
I don't believe any
cleaning up blood? They were concealing evidence? Do you believe that, they were just walking around the house?
My personal thoughts on this. No, listen, my personal thoughts on this are based on experience.
Okay.
The experience that I've witnessed and been part of in my life has been that generally the person that's there before, during, after, discovers, reports the crime is generally high 90% involved in the crime.
Occam's razor, right?
You see? So that's my suspicion for Dylan, because there's so many cases where you can look at all these parents that are missing children, and they ended up being the killers of the kids. Right? Look at all these people.
Let me stop you. Let me stop you right there, okay? Because you just brought something up to my brain. The same true crime panelists or creators, as they like to call themselves, that instantly jump on the fact that the step parent could have killed the kid. The step parent went and hid the kid. This, that, and the other. They're the first one to believe that, but it's far-fetched that Dylan or Bethany could have had anything to do with it.
I don't know that it's far-fetched. I don't see how people can make that argument.
In their mind, they don't want to talk about it. They say that's victim shaming.
Oh, that's not really relevant, though.
But at first, they can say that the parents did something to the kids. They can believe that because of the proximity to the victim. That's what I'm trying to say.
Theory. I'll tell you what a conspiracy theory is. A conspiracy theory is when you start bringing in Dylan's boyfriend and you start bringing in other people that are not mentioned in the data set that you're looking at. I guess this is the best way to explain it. You have a finite data set. That data set is going to offer you questions to ask. But if you bring in other things that are not part of the data set, for example, when Jeff was in here, well, how do we know Kohlberger didn't turn around? Well, because there's no data set to support him turning around, but he could have, but that's not the discussion. And these people keep getting involved in this discussion of some thought up idea that could have happened, but there's no factual support of that. So like in that topic, it was Ann argues that the car was identified. The FBI relied heavily upon a video of a car going the wrong way at the wrong time. Okay. That statement is clear. It's the only bit of data that you have. You can't take that piece of information and say, well, for all we know, he turned around and went back and did the crime. No, that's not a discussion to engage in because there's nothing to support that other than you saying it. The only thing you could discuss and try to understand is what does that mean? They relied heavily upon a video of a car going the wrong way at the wrong time. If you try to understand that data, that's all you can do. When you try to understand the 911 call, there's only a couple of things that could have happened to denote unconscious person, right?
Well, if you were going to go in the direction that you're talking about, like let's use that as an example, going the wrong way at the wrong time. If you're going to say that potentially he made a U-turn, and we're just going to use this as an example, then you're trying to preconceive your evidence.
You're inventing fact,
right? You're trying to match up something that you've already told yourself that this happened, and you're trying to match it up with a hypothetical rather than evidence. Where people get caught up is they believe that the defense has the ability to sit there and just lie about everything that they have. They have the ability to lie about on every document that they have because they're trying to force the prosecutor's hand to show what they have. It's not a game of cards. It's not a chess game. They have to disclose to each side what evidence they have. And the prosecution has given 95%, according to Bill Thompson, of the discovery as of the last court date. So there's not a lot more stuff that they can give them.
More importantly, if people are fair-minded, they'll realize that the discovery she's demanding is almost exclusively connected to the accusation built in the PCA.
Yeah.
Okay. And the genealogical aspect of it. There is no motion to compel discovery on issues we've never heard about that we're aware of, nor is there any new argument being raised in her discovery demands or even in the prosecution statements in response to these demands. So you can look at the case as it stands, and it all surrounds the genealogical work and the PCA, full stop. It does not involve the Banfield. It does not involve some camera from a cop somewhere around the block. But none of that's part of Ann's work. None of that's been brought up by Ann. That's not been brought up by people that call themselves creators. None of it is he was beat to death on Linda Lane and then people urinated on his face. Just some wackadoodle on YouTube is saying that, right? And people that encourage that wackadoodle to keep being a YouTube quote unquote creator, right? I won't associate with people like that. But I first say to them directly, and I have said to them directly, that I will not participate in this. I'm not here to make money. And if you are here to make money, it's a shame that you don't make money based on just seeking the truth and helping people relax a little bit by showing them the truth is hard to find and it takes time, right? That's why you got colleges and universities and higher learning, because the truth is complicated. A lie is simply 2 letters. No, that's how easy a lie is. No, the truth is never that simple. And so these creators, rather than fill the gap and trying to help people understand what's in front of them or decipher some things that might need deciphering or getting people to relax and accept what's there. And as things change, you change with it. That's what I think a creator should be doing, not like Harsh and all of these other people bringing up their bank accounts and bringing up all this ancillary nonsense about people that aren't mentioned in any of these legal documents. To bring up, that Lucky does it, Tommy does it, Dago does it. They all do it with this nonsense and stuff that's not even written down anywhere. And unfortunately, Get a Clue just did it with the front door being open. We don't know that front door was open, Get a Clue. It's a rumor. Now, could it have been open? Sure. But we don't know that. So you can't accept it as being open on a rumor because there's nothing to support that, right? Just like when people say, well, they were wrong when they identified the 2011 to 2013 Elantra. I disagree. I think that they were completely correct in their description of that vehicle. And I think that's why Ann is pointing out that when they identified a 14 to 16 Elantra, they depend heavily upon a video of a car going the wrong way at the wrong time. That to me tells me their idea of what they claim to be Koberger comes from someplace at the wrong time. And the argument that they were looking for an 11 to 13 is also a real argument and it is also a real car. I
Well,
don't
that
conveniently think the cop made a mistake because Brian drives an Elantra. I think the problem in this particular situation is both cars are Elantras.
yeah.
What bad
I
luck is
believe,
that for Kohlberger?
yeah, I believe that, also whenever you look at the probable cause affidavit, you have to understand that these are the things that are going to be brought up because these are the things that were used to indict him.
Correct.
These are the evidence that they have to indict the man. So you're just gonna, like you said, you're just gonna ignore all that and focus on this other stuff that all the YouTube community has focused on. No, you're not, because it's not part of it.
No, and that one guy Gitta does do an extraordinarily good analysis of the Linda Lane footage. Now, we don't know that wasn't staged. So let's be clear. We don't know that is actual evidence that's going to be used or into possession of either the state or the defense. That Linda Lane video that everybody sees with the car.
Mm-hmm.
What we do know is that it appears to be consistent with the times argued in the PCA. Right? That video of a white car pulling into the lot, backing up, driving away, another car. Those timestamps on that particular video are consistent with the PCA. So therefore, we accept that footage as being relevant and part of the story. Yet we don't know that. Because how did that get into the public? It got into the public, I believe, through third-party people. It's third-party information. This was not released by official channels at all.
And when that footage was released, I was glued to my screen, just hoping to see something that showed that showed the white Elantra that they were talking about, that maybe showed a face, maybe showed a shadow of a face, maybe showed him actually being seen driving where you could understand that it was him and his car.
Or something showing a guy about his physical height walking out of a vehicle, or
Yeah, something like that.
I get it.
And when I was watching it, it was like, man, there ain't nothing here. They're just a car driving around, and
but how do we know that wasn't fabricated? How do we know, as an example, that that's even part of their case? That's the truth is we don't know. So does that mean we shouldn't talk about it? No, but we should be very suspect of the information in front of us because it's not verified.
Right. Well, what it does, it opens doors for speculation, right?
It does, but that's where the conspiracies start, and that's where it gets crazy, and that's where it's not fair to the victims. Suspecting Dylan may have had something to do with the events of that night isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a legitimate question based on the facts that we can verify. She was in the home before. She was in the home during. She was in the home after. She discovered the bodies. Then that sequence of fact is typically the sequence of fact that you find in many murder cases, right?
Well, of course.
But
you're not going to build a court case, whether you're prosecution or the defense, on hearsay. It's going to be overruled. You can't go in there and say, well, this is what I think, or this is what I've been told, or this is what so-and-so showed. I mean, because, in reality, I'm not trying to talk bad about other creators, but, you just hear so much stuff. It's like, oh, did you send that to Ann Taylor? Did you send that to the defense? Did you send that to so-and-so? Did you send that, wherever? Why would they want to see something that has nothing to do with anything that is implicating her client? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that you can, in fairness, get off a little bit from the fact. But if you're trying, if you're really, the news media does it too. and they bring up these different things. They say these things about Koberger. There's no verifiable fact. And I think that when you have facts and you try to understand them and you're sticking to the facts, that it's fair. It's fair game when you suspect, did Dylan have any involvement? What was that 911 call? What could they have meant by an unconscious person? Does it mean the cops lied? The cops are hiding it? It could. But let's look at it at a more reasonable in situation. What would you have done? What could have happened? What might they have seen? There's reasons that phone call was legitimate, right?
Okay.
So
Well,
we just move on until we find out it's not.
Let me ask you this question, and this is just educated thought process. All right, as an educated individual, unconscious. That means the person is not capable of responding, correct?
Mm-hmm.
There's no consciousness about their reality. So an unconscious person, they might need medical assistance, yes or no?
Yes.
So if this unconscious person, they called 911,
Mm-hmm.
the cops came. Everything that I've been reading and hearing and going over in my studies is they secure the scene first, meaning the cops would have made sure that she wasn't dead, pretty much, ran into the house to make sure that the crime scene or that the scene was secure, that there wasn't anybody that was going to harm any of the first responders. So in the process, I'm believing that that's when they found the bodies, and that's when it turned from, okay, we're not going to mess with the unconscious person, let the EMS deal with it. We're going to go into the crime scene and start doing what we need to do.
What if the unconscious call was because they were beating on that door and it wouldn't open, and they knew that there were people in there, and they called, they felt, and they said, "There's unconscious. We need help. There's unconscious people here." See, that could also be real. My point is that everybody has gone off the reservation with the unconsciousness, when in fact there's probably a dozen different reasons that's a legitimately honest phone call to have been made.
Yes.
Right. So if we take it and set it aside for that, okay, just leave it at that, because that's the information they gave us. So let's accept that the events that took place were reasonable for the person that made that call to stay unconscious. Right.
Right.
Could have been Dylan passed out. It could have been they couldn't get in the room, or they could only open the door a little bit. And Ethan, they've claimed, now there's no proof of this, but what if he was laying against the door and they couldn't open it? There was a rumor about that, but there's 100 ways where you could have misinterpreted not being able to get into that room as the occupants being unconscious, not dead. Then once the door was opened, you realize the unconscious was dead. I could see that mistake being made. At my point, did it happen that way? That's what they're telling us. So I accept that. Now, if somebody can show evidence contradicting any reasonable explanation why they said unconscious and not dead, if they can show that in evidence and proof and fact, then I'll accept that didn't happen in a reasonable way. You follow me?
Yes. Georgia says, I'd hate to see Koberger guilty if he isn't, and I want him to be accountable if he is guilty. So much is hidden, it's hard to figure out. And then she says, what are your thoughts on it, Sabrina? And Sabrina says, I agree with you, especially with all the secrecy.
Yeah, the secrecy doesn't really. I think there's enough in the public for us to see, have a pretty good peephole into the case. Okay, maybe even a window, a cracked door looking into the case. There's enough info that's been given us, and it's going to depend on if that Linda Lane footage is part of the analysis of the timeline. If that is a real video that's been given to the YouTube community, then I think the argument can be made that Mr. Koberger is not involved, that video is exculpatory. That video is not inculpatory. And that can be made quite clearly through the analysis of what you see on the video when it comes to the automobiles. And the other thing that makes it exculpatory is even the police themselves in their accusations thus far have never alleged that they've witnessed Mr. Koberger.
Right. They've yet to put him in the house
or in a car.
or in the car.
It's a similar vehicle to the suspect's vehicle, right?
Yeah, suspect vehicle number one.
So
And I think people get caught up with the wording where they want to say, okay, instantly I read suspect vehicle number one, so therefore there must be a suspect vehicle number two. That's my logical thinking kicking
right.
in, but that's not necessarily true. It's wording. But your emotional attachment is almost like, here's a crumb. Let me go a little bit further to get another crumb and get another crumb until I finally get to the whole damn cake. And unfortunately, some of these crumbs are stale and they're not even crumbs anymore. They're just
They're doing this. This happens.
bird
Like I
crap.
think Sebastian Roberts is another good example of how a lot of YouTube creators are sensationalizing and causing distractions in the search for a missing child. I don't think the parents personally, I don't think the stepfather and the mother are doing anything to help their own child. I think the stepfather and the mother have made it all about themselves and their innocence and
Mm-hmm.
nothing about finding the child. I've seen nothing coming from those two parents that gives me any faith that they aren't involved. But really, the issue is, where's the boy? How does a child go missing into thin air and what they claim to be the middle of the night and just vanish? Okay, his scent leads to a development, 100 yards behind their home and vanishes. Did aliens get this kid? In other words, there's just people are coming out with different things. Oh, she was on a dating website, da 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 da, and everything is about the parents here. And the bottom line is, where's the boy? How'd the boy get out of the house? Why'd the boy leave the house?
Once
It's
again,
crazy.
once again, the victim gets ignored while the potential perps get all the coverage.
Right.
You
Well, they're the
know,
only ones that you can talk to in the end. But the thing is,
well, of course, but you know, how is her being on a dating site gonna find her son?
well, you also see the same thing with Steve Gonzalez. He's courted the YouTube community, and so is the stepfather with Sebastian Rogers. And my question is, I could understand Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, these espionage people courting the internet to let people know they're alive or something,
Right.
but not in these horrific, missing children and deaths. Why would you court the internet community? I don't get that.
And you've
Has
had
it,
that
has it
cough
helped
for a
Steve?
while. You've been sick.
I think it's backfired on Steve Gonzalez when it comes to the internet and the YouTube creators.
Yeah.
They've turned it into a shit show. They're doing the same thing with Sebastian Roberts. Sebastian Roberts, the guy Seth, I think is the stepfather, he brought it to YouTube, and now it's turned into a shit show. What is it with YouTube turning everything into a shit show? You got JLR running around, turning things into a shit show. Why? You got CJ running around. He found bags of dead dogs.
I
What
don't
is he
have a
doing?
clue. I think maybe because I mean I haven't been in the true crime community for a long time, but I remember hearing somewhere about the Kylie Rodney case or whatever, where some internet people supposedly gave up some clues that helped solve the case or whatever. So I would think that, since then, everybody's hungry to be the one
Wow.
to give the proper evidence to solve the case. I mean, it's not going to happen it's not going to happen from this desk that I'm sitting behind.
You're not going to solve this case through your cell phone. I'll tell you that right now.
I'm not. I'm not
Twitter,
going to solve it,
right?
and I'm not even trying to solve it.
I know,
I'm trying
neither am
to
I.
understand it. I'm trying to understand it until trial gets here. That way, when trial gets here, I won't be so shocked whenever I don't hear about the Banfield, or I don't hear about Linda Lane, or I don't hear about the Fight Club, or I don't hear about the tunnels, or I don't hear about the Bad
Parachutes.
Greek, or
Look at
the
that
Grub
TikTok
Truck.
guy, that drip drop. Conspiracy King 101, that guy, with some of the things he fed into this IDAHO4. It's insanity.
Well, if this was a movie, it would be selling tickets, but it's not a movie. It's real
Yeah,
life, and There was 4 people that were slaughtered in a home. There were college students. They were about to start living their lives.
Right. Well, here's the thing too, but I want to turn this around. I want to turn this around, and this is a shame there weren't millions of people listening to this. The problem isn't the creator, it's the audience. You see, these creators exist because the audience for them exists, because the audience doesn't hold them to account, because the audience feeds into these bullcrap conspiracy theories, a parachute from above, tunnels underneath, the blood on the roof, peeing in his face. And you see, it's the viewer that's the problem.
How could you be someone in the chat?
Mm-hmm.
And if you think this way, guys, that you're in my chat, I hope I'm not offending you. But if I do, I mean, I'm just asking the question: how could you logically believe that you hear this type of information and that it's true? How could you not use your analytical thinking to question what the so-called creator is telling you? I mean, I hope you do that when I speak. I mean, I hope that you don't take everything I say as the gospel. You get what I'm saying? It's like I hope that you're able to say, well, let me look that up, because I do challenge you to go look it up if you don't believe, what I'm saying, or if you want more information. I try to share the pages because I want you guys to educate yourselves so you just don't fall for anything.
See, we've all been programmed, me included, to do what you're seeing happen here. These creators exist because the viewer demands they exist, not because it's just that person. Right? Look at all the monetary gains this drip drop and others have got. Look at Harsh Reality and look at a bunch of these other people with these big follower counts. Listen, I'm not opposed to anybody making money, bro. It's America. However, if you're going to be true crime and not true crime entertainment, and not stress that this is entertainment, okay, that you're bringing up things that aren't documentably provable, that's entertainment. That isn't part of this case. You're not helping the case. You're not investigating the case. You're not going to solve this case because you're somewhere around the world on your phone looking at a Banfield video.
Right.
You need to be clear to the viewer. But more importantly, the viewer needs to hold the streamer to account. And that's what isn't happening. The streamer is giving you data and information and entertainment and or fact in a lot of cases too. And you're not holding them to any standard other than the lowest standard of all, which is anything goes. That's the viewer more than it is the creator. The creator's just responding to a market.
Well, let's get back to your original thought. We were in the house, okay? We were in the house. You were talking about the closest proximity of people to the crime are usually the perpetrator. Can you repeat what you told me one time as far as who's more apt to abuse their children? Can you repeat that really quickly?
Women. And I give credit to Cluminati is actually the one that brought that statistic to my attention, that women are more apt to be abused to their children than men.
Okay.
There were 239,000 reports of child abuse or child neglect with women versus 210,000 in the same year for men. 239 for women, 210 for men. So women are equally or more so going to be the abuser of the child.
Okay, so using that knowledge,
right,
and the proximity of the person nearest to the crime,
right,
and there's a factual statistic that it was 2 women, right? Could they potentially have been the abuser?
Are you referring to the Idaho 4, you mean?
Yes. Because that's where we were going before we...
Right. And in all fairness, you have to consider the situation as delivered to you. And it was delivered to us in a way that leaves massive questions about Dylan's actions. It is not conspiracy, nor is it victim shaming to try to understand them. Now, don't invent things that aren't there. I'm not going to start calling her. People were saying she was a particular gender.
Right.
People were
Right.
making slanderous statements. No, it's not relevant. But her own words could be examined, and you try to understand them. You get to the best understanding you can and wait for more fact to come forward. That's how you're supposed to deal with this stuff, not forever speculate
Exactly.
until the end of time and make stuff up. Like,
So if you were going to go with Dylan, with the Dylan theory, okay, can you kind of, just for the sake of, okay, just for the sake of conversation, can you give me the Dylan theory?
if I were a policeman involved in that case, I would have concerned myself heavily with Dylan's statements and actions. And I would have concerned myself with the crime scene being what appears to be a crime of passion. And I would have pursued that as an investigatory angle or lead. I would have not paid attention to outside. In other words, I would have broke the case down to more than one guy looking at it. This is a big case. I would have let another investigator look at a potential drug issue. I would have let another investigate. In other words, there is no conspiracy theory when you don't know nothing. Everything's a conspiracy theory. You agree with that?
Yeah, pretty much. It's your
So,
belief system behind the facts.
right. If you
Lack
happen upon a crime scene, any thought you have is a conspiracy until facts support it.
Exactly.
Fair enough. So when the police got to the crime scene here, they themselves are trying to formulate in their head, how could this have happened? And I think that there were many issues and many angles that could and probably should have been pursued. We don't know that they weren't, but it appears like they're not because they're focused on Koberger, to me, which I think is tunnel vision. But can you make an argument that the occupants in the home that survived or were alive before, during, and after, can you suspect that they had involvement in the crime? And I think only fairly, of course you can. They had opportunity. They had the time. They had the means, right? They had the ability. They're living, breathing human beings, right? To wield a knife. So all of those things fit the two survivors. And you know what trumped that was a Linda Lane video that nobody could actually confirm wasn't fabricated for our use, right?
Well, also, like you're saying, the proximity.
Right.
Based on what the PCA says, she opened her door, what, 3 times? 3 times.
Yeah.
Each one of those times, how did she know to open her door if it wasn't aligned with a statement, right? She wouldn't have just told the police officer during the interview, hey, I opened my door 3 times. He would have said, well, what made you open your door 3 times? That would have been a logical question, correct?
Right.
And that's probably where they got the answer of, okay, one of the times is because I heard what sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog. And then I heard what sounded like Kaylee say someone's here. But she didn't open her door that time. Or did she? Was that all in one?
We don't know if that was part of a door opening or not.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't certain on that one.
It may have been that she heard that and opened the door after hearing that. That's
Right.
possible. That would make sense, right?
Right.
But she doesn't know it was Kaylee either who said it.
Right. I mean, she said it sounded like Kaylee that said someone's here. Okay, so supposedly she opened the door because she heard what sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog. Or did she say that before she opened the door? I mean, I'm getting confused because
you'd have to read it again, but pretty much in a nutshell, it's her statements are exactly what you're saying, in the order of which would be, I don't know how significant it would be, but the truth of the matter is she tells us she opened that door 3 times and looked out.
Right.
And on the third time she saw a man clad in black.
Yeah, and she had a statement behind every time she opened the door, correct?
I think she did. I think that her statements were a reflection of the time she opened the door, but I can't confirm that without reading the document again.
Okay.
I'm
pretty certain as well, but the reason I brought that up is because the 2 other times, there's 2 other statements. She would have heard those when the door was shut. She would have heard, there's someone here, and then she would have heard, it's okay, I'm here to help you. Those are 2 other statements that are written in the PCA that doesn't signify that the door was open. So she would have heard this through the closed door, correct?
Yeah.
So to say that she didn't hear anything is false.
Right. She heard something.
Of course.
She's not. She doesn't seem to understand what she heard. Obviously, the calamity, what she faced the next day. I mean, here's the other side of Dylan is. It's highly possible that what she's telling us is exactly the way she remembers it, and that's it. Is it possible that she was scared and she went and locked her door and fell asleep? Yeah. You may not like that. You may not want to. If you got to believe in something, you may not want to believe it. But if that's her statement, and it's irrefutable, then that's how it is. That's what you have to accept.
Right.
You don't got to like it.
I mean, it would be like right now. I was hearing the dog barking. Everybody heard the dog barking, right?
Right.
I heard that dog barking. Okay. That would be me saying, okay, well, I heard what sounded like the dog barking. I didn't open the door, but I still stated it as fact to collaborate a timeline. Yes or no?
Yeah, she's collaborating a series of events. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the timeline as I remember it. Okay, the dog was barking and then the dog stopped. So then I heard a thud downstairs. At that point, I opened the door to see if I could see anything. I didn't see anything. And then I heard somebody say, hey, come back here. So this is how somebody that's being interviewed, how they progress through their evidence, correct? Yes.
Yeah, their memories, what they're progressing through.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot to take into consideration too. How long was it after the crime that she was interviewed? Was she interviewed immediately?
We don't know.
Right, exactly. We don't know.
Was she taken down to the station? Was she stripped? Was she put under black lights? Was she looked at for any kind of injuries?
Exactly.
Was she examined as a suspect in the crime?
And if we come to find out that she wasn't,
huge problem if they didn't do that with her.
Yeah. If we find out later that she didn't have any of that stuff, her or Bethany, there's a problem with that because they didn't treat her the same way they would have treated a male suspect or a male witness.
Well, not even that. No, let's not even put gender in it. Let's not even compare.
Okay.
Let's just
another person.
Accept the fact that these people were part of a crime scene and should have been treated as participants in the crime until found otherwise. I mean, good God, you don't pull up to a car crash and ignore the driver behind the wheel.
Okay.
He may be completely innocent, but he still has to be questioned. You still have to find out his role in this, right?
Right.
And now we're not talking about an accident. We're talking about a quadruple homicide under conditions in which you put yourself in the home. You're there.
Right.
You didn't hear it? As a policeman, I'd be like, well, how could you not have heard any of this? And so I wouldn't have said that to her. My point is, I wouldn't have said a word to Dylan about the incredible unlikeness of her statements. I would have used those statements as a basis to investigate her as participating in the crime.
Let me ask a question.
Otherwise,
let me ask a question to the chat, Sergeant. Let me ask you a question to the chat. You guys are still with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope you are. How many of you, based on the PCA information that we have available to us through the PCA, believe that Dylan that Dylan did not have anything to do with this? 1 for yes, 2 for no. If you put a 2, type if you believe she had something to do with it.
If you think she was involved, 1. If you think she wasn't, 2.
We
got to try snapping ourselves out of this term belief. That's what I mean. We've all been programmed. I'm victim of it too. But you don't believe that like you believe in God. You think that she could have been involved.
If you believe she was involved, press 1. If you believe that she wasn't.
Think.
Oh, gosh. See, that's just a word that I use all the time.
I know. We misuse it.
If you think she was involved, press 1. If you think she wasn't, press 2.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not trying. I'm laughing over here because I say it too still. And I've been trying for 6-8 months to stop misusing the word believe.
Right.
It's
Right.
hard not to, bro, because it's been so hardwired into us.
It's a therapy word for me. I use it all day long in therapy.
And that's fine because you're talking about spiritual stuff, right?
Exactly. And cognitive beliefs and things of that nature.
Right.
So we only have one answer in the room. We have one who thinks.
Well, we only got 5 people. We're not that popular.
Come on, man. Where are the other 4?
Well, there you go.
Bat shit crazy. Is that your name? Oh, bat sheet. Bat sheet crazy. Okay. There's 2 ones.
Yeah.
If Dylan would have said,
yeah.
If Dylan would have said, I had my earplugs in and drank a bottle of wine, it would have made more sense.
But let me just say, her statements in and of themselves could be completely accurate, and she has absolutely nothing to do with this crime. That is absolutely possible. You don't have to, like, unless you can't prove otherwise, that's exactly how it happened. That's the problem with trying to deal with knowledge is learning to accept that no matter the answer, that's the answer. Like it or not isn't relevant. You've got to deal with facts on an analytical basis, not an emotional basis. Take the emotion out of it.
Okay,
and when you do that, the belief comes with it.
How many of you think Brian did it? Press 1. How many of you think he didn't do it? Press 2.
Yeah, they would have gone insane. She's right. Yeah, I
Don't
mean,
have 3 dogs. It would have been a strange.
We don't know that Murphy didn't go insane. We don't know that he did. He's really he's really not been part of the story as far as we can tell. I mean, she said she heard him barking and thought and interpreted that as her, Kaylee playing with her dog.
Well, didn't you hear as well as it could have been hearsay, but somewhere along the line, I remember hearing that she yelled up the stairs to shut the fuck up.
That was hearsay.
Okay. Because I remember hearing that early on.
Yep. And I did too. And I was misled too. I misled myself thinking that was actual data.
Yeah. Because I was thinking if she did say that, if there is proof of that, then she could have even potentially seen up the stairs. Because that's where Maddie's room is right up the stairs.
Yeah, but you got to turn the corner to get up all the way up the stairs.
Well, yeah, true.
It's 2 platforms. So she would only see the first 7 or 9 steps. I forget how many steps are on the first run. Then 9. A platform, and then you turn left and you go up the rest of the stairs.
Yeah, there's 8 and then there's 9.
Yeah. So she would have saw only the bottom staircase, the bottom half.
She said, I can't answer about Koberger yet, Gage. Okay. Fair enough. Nope. I mean, there's a lot of individuals that just do not know one way or the other. And I'm kind of like that. I'm more apt to think that with the evidence that they have, and I've always thought this, that there's more evidence against him than there is for him not being the one. You get what I'm saying? I believe
it's just the opposite. I see the evidence that they have is exculpatory, not inculpatory, meaning this is evidence that he'll use to defend himself. The very evidence that they're claiming shows he's the perp is the very evidence they're trying to drag from the cops to make the argument that evidence shows it wasn't Mr. Koberger. That's the defense she's making. And I could see that being a legitimate defense when you look, if the Linda Lane footage is real, there is no way you're seeing a 2014 to 2016 Elantra going around that building to park. It is impossible.
Okay.
So it's a Chrysler 300. Listen, there's no ambiguity here, and you can make that argument, and I guarantee you could convince a jury that what you're seeing in that video is not an Elantra that went and parked. Okay? And because you can do that, that makes that video exculpatory evidence. In other words, it can't be an Elantra if it's a Chrysler 300 at 4:07 and 30 seconds that parked, which is an argument that can be made and won by identification of that car's sale panel. I 100% agree with Get a Clue on that. That evidence is not, and the PCA is not damning to Mr. Koberger at all. That's where the hump is for a lot of people. They have to accept that when you look at the data that we have, there are absolute conclusions that can be made, and you can stand tall and say, if that Linda Lane footage is real, it proves that those cars were not Brian. 100%. So therefore, he couldn't be based. Does that mean he didn't kill them? No. But they're using that and that timeline to say he did the killings. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's no way that timeline can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt to show that it was Koberger in that timeline. I guarantee it. And that's the case Ann Taylor is making in her motions. That's not to say he didn't park down the block and walk in unseen and commit the crime. You follow me?
Yes.
But based on the data they gave us, that data does not support his guilt.
Okay, I get you.
You see?
If he is guilty, I really don't think he did it by himself. I was gonna tell you, Sarge. People are stuck on a time frame, and I'm glad that you spoke on that a little bit, because I've heard that in other platforms as well, that people are stuck in the time that it took to commit this crime. I've had other streams that I've talked about the K-bar knife. I've talked about the timing, about how a knife wound, describing the knife wound, describing the attacks and things of that nature. If you'll go look on my channel page, you can see some of those other videos that describe it and lay it out more in theory based on facts than us just speaking on it right now. And I'd rather you do that, because you can learn a lot about how a knife attack happens and the wounds and how long it takes to bleed out and stuff like that. I'm not trying to be vulgar, but there is plenty of information on my page that if you just go look for it, you can find the answer that we're talking about right now.
The incapacitation of that weapon striking you, your mental shock that takes over, the cutting of nerves and different muscles and tissue. That impact of that blade into the human body is a trauma that you don't want to. I don't ever want to have any clue how it feels. But I understand that once you strike somebody with a blade like that, they could become completely unable to fight back. Completely unable to fight back. And you could continue to strike them while they lay there bleeding out. It's gross. It's nasty, but that's what that weapon does.
You know,
so I agree with you that 9 minutes to me, I'm not going to argue. I think the 9 minutes is an error, because I think they're basing it on the movement of the cars, and the cars can be proven not to be Brian. So therefore, I think their timeline is wrong based on their own facts.
You know, I agree with Jeff on this, and we spoke on this that night when all three of us were on panel. I agree with Jeff on this part as far as the knife. It has that hard part on the end. There's no evidence that this happened, but an educated thinking, that hard part on the end of the knife, on the K-bar knife, could be used as a blunt force object to incapacitate people to the fact that they could be unable to defend themselves to the point where you could complete this crime quickly.
You strike them on the head with the blunt end of the knife is what you're saying.
Yes, incapacitate them, and just like a hammer, just like what he described as a hammer, and it'd be, and they'd be out, and then you're free to position them how you want them, stab them however it is you want to do the
there's a million ways to explain how you can incapacitate somebody, whether it be through blunt force trauma or through the blade usage itself.
Right. But
there's no doubt that happened, because there's 4 victims.
In the PCA and the coroner discussed that they were puncture wounds. They were not slashes. They were puncture wounds and tears. They were not slash wounds. So if they were puncture wounds, that means that they were deep. Does that make sense? They weren't slashing. Right. It's not like he was slashing. He was.
I don't know has anybody ever seen a boxing match where a boxer gets hit on the right side of his body below his rib cage and he drops like a rag doll? That's a punch to the liver. If somebody stabs you in the liver, talk about incapacitating you. You're not fighting back.
Right.
There are wounds of that kind of a knife entering your body. You don't need to hit him. You could, of course, you could use the blunt end, use it as a hammer. So I'm not discounting that couldn't have happened. There's no description of that happening, though.
Right, exactly.
We're not told there was blunt force trauma. We're told that there were punctures, slices, tears. We aren't being told about blunt force trauma. So the idea that they used the knife that way is another conspiracy theory on someone's wild imagination that isn't supported in documentation, right? Where does it say that they had blunt force trauma to the head?
Well,
it doesn't.
There was an article. I don't know if it was News Nation or if it was Banfield or I don't know, but I heard that Kaylee supposedly had 40. I had her
54,
face.
I think it was, or something.
I think that was a stab wound. I thought
right.
She had her face was beat in pretty badly, where the bones were broken in her face.
I haven't heard that.
And it was unrecognizable. Yes, I heard this very early on.
I don't think her parents said she was just slumped over in bed. I don't think that they said. I don't think Steve ever referred to his daughter being unrecognizable, has he?
I mean, the reason that I bring this up is because the tunnel, the Fight Club stuff, and all that, they were trying to piece that together with a cartel member having her tied up to a chair and shooting a bean gun at her face and breaking her bones.
Okay, but another sick conspiracy theory.
No, the one that I heard very early on about when they were talking about how they found the bodies, because they also were talking about Ethan's hamstrings or his legs were cut so deeply it went to the hamstring. This was very, very early on. I don't know if it was 4chan stuff. I don't remember.
Was it documented stuff though? No, right?
Yes, I remember it being documented. Yes.
How about the quote from the police officer where he says that their faces were like angels? They were completely unharmed.
Wow.
What about that quote? That's a quote in an article for one of the responding officers. He just was so sick.
Touche.
Seeing
but
what he saw.
that was Ethan and Vanna. He didn't say that about Kaylee and Maddie.
Well, I don't know. He didn't say it about anyone specific, but he said they all look like dolls, or they look like dolls.
He said when he entered the first room, they were angelic looking.
Yeah.
It looked just like dolls.
And he didn't say anything about the other room being any different, right?
I heard him say it.
What did he say about the other room?
He said her face was beat in pretty good. That's what I heard about it.
The cop said that?
No, I'm just being facetious with you right now.
Oh,
no.
I'm trying to understand though.
No, but I heard this early on, and I could be wrong. It could have just been a 4chan rumor. It could have been it could have been a Reddit rumor. It could have been, something of that nature. But I remember hearing that.
What's the relevance of it? What would be the relevance if that was? I mean, there's no evidence that it's true. But so what's the point if she was hit?
To try to show the severity. I think people were caught up in the beginning as who the target was. So if I show that one is more severe than the other, then everybody's going to know that this was the initial target. You get what I'm saying? So if Kaylee had more brutal wounds than Maddie and the other two, then obviously she was the target.
It could also be that she wasn't the target. It could also be that she put up a strong fight, and this person was so furious that they had to fight so hard to take this person out. They just kept swinging.
Well, I understand that. I understand that. But you asked me, well, the significance would be for somebody to spread this gossip. Let's call it what it is, gossip. Okay.
All right. That's what I'm hoping you were pointing out gossip. We weren't discussing this.
Okay. The point of spreading this gossip, I would say, is everybody most of the people that very early on they were hell bent. I'm talking about mainstream media. Who was the target? And it said, the dad's like, well, they didn't have to go upstairs and blah blah blah, because it was being made like Kaylee was the target very early on, and that's when I was hearing all these wounds and everything. It was being portrayed that Kaylee had more vicious wounds, and Ethan had those kind of wounds as well to keep him, incapacitated.
A lot of those rumors, though, are just that, and people, and that's what I mean. The creators jump on it and they'll run with it, and it'll sell a lot of tickets.
Of course.
And that's part of how this stuff gets all effed up. That's these creators now running around the different crime scenes. They're not helping, right? Look at JLR. He's not helping. He's a real twit. Okay. Out there talking about, we don't know if that stepfather's involved with that kid's demise. We don't know anything of the truth at this point. So there's no sense attacking the guy and accusing the guy and inciting the guy. What's the point of all of that? It gets a lot of views. He makes a lot of money. Good for him. But that isn't true crime. That's like that show there where the guy says, you are not the father. Is that what true crime on YouTube is? You are not the father show? Who's that guy?
Maury, yeah. Yeah, I got you.
Or you guys are all Maury Povich wannabes? Is that what's it? Not you, but I'm saying, is that what these creators are?
Yeah. I mean, they call themselves investigators, like they have a badge and everything. I'm an investigator.
Creators. We're creators. What are you creating? You're creating.
I don't create anything.
Rumor.
I create a nightly live where I discuss things. That I'm a discusser, if anything.
Right. And you're also an educator at the same time, whether you like it or not, right? You're both learning and educating, because people in your chat room, people, your guests, you yourself have data and information that's valuable, and you're sharing it, you're explaining it. That's fantastic. That's what we all everybody pretends that's what they're doing when in fact they're not. That's not what they're doing. They're creating sensational side stories that have no bearing in reality, and people then bring them into this, like they'll bring that thing in here, like we went through when the other guy was around. Brings up these arguments that have no basis in supporting fact. It's just what you think. And I can't debate what you think.
Let me answer Sabrina's question right quick. Sabrina, you're asking what we're talking about in here, and what we're talking about early on. We heard a bunch of gossip, or I heard a bunch of gossip that Kaylee's face was beaten in, and Ethan's legs were mutilated deeply, and it was during the early on information that was being leaked out or whatever, and over time it just kind of sizzled out. So I was giving Sarge a hard time as well. I was trying to say that it was factual, that I heard it, but it's not fact. I just read it somewhere, maybe 4chan, maybe Reddit or something like that, and I got confused at where I heard the information. So I was talking about it. So that's all it is. It's not factual.
And here's what I want to say, Sabrina, is that most of the people out here that claim to be creators are just creating drama and unverified circumstances that are being discussed and then pushed around as if they're real, which is it's entertainment what they're doing. They're not true crime. True crime doesn't include tunnels that don't exist. And then once you realize the tunnels don't exist, you vanish, and then you come back after a period of time with more. They don't include blood on a roof or people parachuting in, or a fight club where you could see reflections and some nonsense of Ethan being beaten to death and then peed on by 3 people.
Right.
That kind of nonsense has to stop. And the only way to stop it is through the viewer. The viewers have to turn their back on that stuff and tell the creators cut it out. Right. And the drama and the nightmare of and rather than discussing the data, seeing what it says and moving on and waiting for more, they fill in these places, these voids, with these sensational things. And it's just not true. And to me, I think it's a disrespect to the victims and especially the survivors. Imagine if that were your kid, right? And now you're hearing creators saying your kid's face was peed all over. Are you serious?
Right, exactly. Georgia says if Koberger did this crime, it's so hard to believe that there was no DNA in his car. It tells me he didn't use his car.
Right. See, that's a legitimate perspective to have. 100%. That is a legitimate logical thinking. So that means
get better, Batshit Crazy. Nice to see you in chat. Hope to see you again some other time. Get to feeling better.
Yep. Good night.
Thank you for being here. So,
said?
so if we're talking about, dispelling rumor, which that's what we're talking about as well. You know, at the same time that rumors are being created, conspiracies are being spread, hardly anybody is focusing on the real knowledge of the law, the crime, the investigation, the court process, and all that. Sure, they're reading the documents, but your interpretation of a document is almost like your interpretation of the Bible verse versus my interpretation of the Bible verse. And I believe that that's where a lot of this confusion comes from that's created, because people have the capacity to want to believe what they want to believe, and they don't use the thinking process. And when
Right,
it
but
comes
knowledge
to the,
it should never be believed. Knowledge should be verifiable with a supporting fact, or it isn't to be believed. And that's the problem that we've all suffered from. That the audience is completely enamored in that, where any outside statement holds water, when in fact the outside statement, there's no proof to support the statement. They're arguing
okay,
that Mr. Kohlberger did X, Y, and Z at these particular times, blah, blah, blah. In order for him to be convicted, you have to show that unequivocally to be true with a fact, right? And the same thing should go for us when we hear a statement such as whatever it might be. Could be any crazy thing like Ethan's face being urinated on, which is horrific. Where can you support that? Show me the proof and then tell me your story. And people aren't addressing what they call true crime that way. What they have is a belief that he did it or didn't do it. And then everything they hear, they interpret to confirm their belief. And that's ignorance. That's retardation. That's insane. You're not supposed to deal with knowledge that way. You're supposed to have facts. And you could think he's guilty, but if any evidence comes out that questions his guilt, you then have to also question his guilt. That's how you're
so
supposed to deal with it.
so you, hey, let me ask you a question, because there's a lot of creators out there, right? There's a lot of creators that have different theories and different beliefs and all that stuff. Do you think that they honestly support what they're spewing out of their mouth? Do you think that they really can get off the panel and go, man, that's a hell of a theory. I am so glad that I shared that with my audience.
Well,
Do
I
you
don't know
believe?
about that, but let me just say that if people believed in the scriptures and in doing unto others as they want done unto themselves, as much as they believed in these crazy effing conspiracy theories, the world would be a better place. Okay,
Well, yeah, of
right?
course.
So the problem with the believing of information is the biggest. What did they say to us? Don't eat from the tree of knowledge. And now everybody believes in knowledge, but knowledge isn't always fact. It's only a part of the fact. That's why you have learning institutions, right?
But
Knowledge
I just
is a
said think.
dangerous thing to
I
believe
just
in.
said think. I didn't say believe. I just said think. And
No, I'm
I
not
did
talking about
not.
you. I'm talking about the audience and people in general and how they
Okay,
deal
but
with information.
I
Yeah,
asked a question. Do you think that they honestly can get off their panel and say, well, that was
sure.
a hell of a theory that I just spent this 30 minutes to an hour on showing videos, and I spent all this time behind the scenes. Man, I did a good job tonight. This I did my part of humanity in solving this case. Do you think that people get off these panels and actually believe or think that way?
I think they do, absolutely. And I think the reason is they're not being getting many pushback. And they won't allow pushback. They'll block and ban you and defame you. They'll out you. They don't want pushback. That's the problem when people believe in knowledge. They then defend it. Why do you think the Romans and the Muslims went to war and the Buddhists and the others went? Because you're arguing about a belief. And if you're going to believe Kohlberger did this, anything you hear can be twisted to fit your belief. That's called confirmation bias. But when you believe in things that are man-made, you're making a huge mistake and doing the world a disservice. You're hurting your fellow man. You literally are. Because at this point, there's nothing to say that Koberger did or didn't do this, other than the data in front of you. And if you got to invent to create a story to support this data, there's something you're doing something wrong.
Welcome, Matt. Welcome back, Matt. Transparency is the kryptonite to conspiracy theories. Once you shine a light on the facts, those wild theories start crumbling faster than a poorly constructed Jenga.
You would think, but that doesn't happen. You'll still see, regardless of what facts you put forward, you'll still see people ignoring them facts and countering them with a belief or with some theory that has no supporting evidence. And that's the key in any dealing with information, is it has to be supportable. And normal-minded people can both agree with the supportable evidence, right? Or a statement. A rocket doesn't go to the space because people believe that this lighting a match is going to get them in the air, right? There's no believing in anything when you build a rocket. Rockets are built on fact. The case of convicting a person in America needs to be built on fact, just like a rocket motor, okay?
Right? Well, even when a trial happens, because there's going to be a trial eventually.
Right.
After all the motions, after all the BS, there's going to be a trial.
Right.
The facts are going to be spoken. And the trial is going to be broadcast through a camera, right? In the courtroom. I just don't understand if anyone is going to be capable of accepting the truth as it's coming out as factual without still being able to resort to conspiracy. Even during the trial, there's probably going to be conspiracy theories going on.
Right.
Do you agree with that or not?
I think people we've traveled down this rabbit hole of believing in knowledge so deeply that I don't know that we're ever going to pull ourselves out of it. It's fair to consider Koberger as being guilty. I don't have any objection to that at all. It's unfair when you have to create situations that you can't support as fact. You've crossed the line now. Now you're inventing your own ideas, not look what this document says, look what this photo shows. If you don't have something to support what you're thinking, that's fine. Wait, it might show up, right? Don't go and invent scenarios to support what you believe, because you're not that's the vicious circle that we're in. That's where people are disagreeing here. They're disagreeing on a belief. They're not disagreeing on a fact.
You're right. Georgia says, do you guys know if a criminal profile was ever used prior to Brian's arrest? And if so, did Brian fit the profile? If my mind serves me correctly, an FBI agent did create a profile, but I don't know if it was just one of those panel FBI agents like on News Nation or something like that. I don't ever remember hearing of one or the police coming to a press conference.
Didn't the age group and incel type stuff, didn't that come from like I thought they did rely on some information, maybe not complete, in the early parts of the investigation. Or was that solely somebody on a news station, the talking head that was an FBI agent telling us that? Which I believe they've done that.
Wasn't it somebody like Coffindoffer or somebody like that gave the profile of it may have been on one of those news programs that there was a profile given, but I don't remember the police giving a press conference.
I don't remember that either.
This is the profile of the person we're looking for. All that I remember about the police press conferences were, we need the public's help in finding this vehicle, and we still haven't found a suspect. That's pretty much all I remember about their stuff. There wasn't a lot given, after the initial, well, this is what we know, this is what we have, gag order, and that was it.
The gag order is kind of a nightmare, but again, there is a lot to glean from data being released during this process. So when you focus on that, you can look at it. I don't care how you look at it. To me, he is innocent because he's an American, and the court must prove him guilty. The government must prove him guilty. And to this point, they've got an argument, and I see it. I understand what their point is,
Yeah.
I reviewed it and come to a different conclusion, but I don't believe I'm right and they're wrong. I think I'm right in what I'm seeing, and I think that they've got tunnel vision or making a huge mistake. However, the trial should be able to vet that out.
Yeah.
Right? There
I
should be
mean, like I said last night, even if he's guilty, he's gonna get an appeal automatically.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're gonna go put him in the gas chamber or shoot him the next day. It doesn't happen that way. And Georgia, I want to tell you that you can Google that, and if there is a document that exists, just look through the
right.
the search result that it gives you, because there is one. I'm just not sure it's an official one. I believe that there's been plenty of professionals or ex-professionals that gave a profile of what they could be looking for, but I just don't really remember if there was an official person that stood up and said, "Hey, this is what we're looking for."
Well, I just did Google it, and the first one to come up was Fox News, and there's probably going to be more of the other news agencies, and they say FBI profiler reveals suspects' likely attributes, November 22nd. But I don't know that this person isn't just a talking head.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, they hypothesized. So I don't think there was any official FBI profiling used in this case. I think it was all media-driven, retired or current FBI agents, giving their opinion.
Yeah. I've seen that too, Jeff, where it said, because there was a lot of people that were stating, it was either a college kid or it was an old. I mean, there was that psychic that said it was an older person, in the late 20s. I don't even psychic Donna or whatever her name was. I mean, I don't really rely on all that, but there's been a lot of people that have had their thoughts on this, and that's what I'm going to call it, is their thoughts, because their thoughts are relevant, whether I believe it's right, whether I believe it's wrong. It is wrong in the fact that you're doing injustice to the victims by slandering their names and their memory when you're putting stuff out there that is viciously unseen, unproven, and is not anywhere in the evidence that the police has or the court system.
Or there's evidence. Listen, here's a good example of information that you accept at face value, but you also realize that it could change. Here's an example. Ann Taylor, in a motion, said that there is no connection between my client and the victims, electronic or otherwise. You could take that at face value for what it says. You also could take at face value the arguments that were made early on of all the technology and things that were going to be used to convict Mr. Kohlberger, and that he was stalking them, and he was on Instagram, of which there's never been any evidence to support that. None. Just statements and words, mainly from talking heads in the media. Okay? So you can accept that to be true, that Kohlberger was stalking them, that he was on Instagram, that he was this, he was this, he was that. You can accept that. There's no evidence at this point to support that. So when the defense comes forward and says what they said, that there is no connection between Kohlberger, the victims, electronically or otherwise, those two countervening arguments are valid, right? But you have to accept what Ann Taylor is telling you. Does that mean that there isn't evidence now given to her through more investigation to connect him electronically? No, it does not mean that. They still could possibly. However, when that statement was made, there was never any factual data given by the cops to contradict it before or after she made it. Right? There's nothing in the PCA that says we track Mr. Kohlberger's contact with her on Instagram and his money being sent to this particular pay service. Or there, in other words, there is absolutely no accusation of Kohlberger being tied to them other than what you heard on the news. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's why you give Ann's statement validity, because she's the only official person saying there is no connection. So you have to accept it. You don't have to like it.
And we have to, and to piggyback on what you're saying, on the last time that these individuals speak, it's the latest information that they have. that doesn't mean that a month, 2 months, 3 months later that there's still the same information that they have. They could have gathered more information in that time frame. They don't necessarily have to show every card that they get, kind of like the YouTube creator. They want to show every little bit of detail that they create to show a pattern or a path of where they got to where they got.
More importantly, you're in law enforcement, and let me just point this out to anybody that does. There's 8 people in here, so to the 8 of you in here, every single thing that we're aware of that they allege Kohberger's involved with isn't from presented evidence. It's from warrants seeking such evidence. Do you understand? What you know about Kohberger's connection to the victims isn't anything of evidence. It's the police putting in a warrant to Reddit. The police putting in a warrant to Facebook. The police putting in a warrant to Instagram. They're looking for a connection between Kohberger and the victims in those warrants.
Yes.
They're not alleging that that's truth. A warrant is only suggestive of a search. That's what it gives you permission to do. Your search topic is, you're going to search my home for a firearm. Fair enough. This is why we want to search his home. Blah, 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 blah. Fair enough. You sign off on the warrant. Now you have to find the gun. You see? What people have done, if they've interpreted what these warrants are seeking, is evidence of a connection between Kohberger and the victims. And that is not what a warrant is. It's a document that allows you to search for these connections, to search for these weapons. Right? And people are, and so the only solid data that you have that's documented are warrants and Ann Taylor's statement. Of the two, her statement holds more water, not because I like her, not because I believe, but because factually speaking, when you put those two circumstances on a scale, hers weighs more. You see? I have no desire. I want them to catch the killer. And if it's Kohberger, I want Kohberger to be handled. But you've got to show us evidence that when you put it on a scale, it makes sense. And for people making all these accusations, he was connected to these victims. There's no evidence that we've seen that does that. Just warrants.
You cut
Does that
out.
make sense to you, 12 gauge?
You cut out. Say that again.
I said there's no evidence connecting Brian to the victims. All there are warrants looking for evidence.
Right. And a warrant is basically just that. It gives you the legal right to pursue evidence where you believe that evidence is going to be found. It's specific. You can't just say, I want a warrant to get into this house. You got to itemize exactly what you're looking for. Right. I'm looking for a box that says.
What it's looking for, let me ask you this, is looking for proof that you have it. In other words, is the warrant itself proof that you did something or that you possess something?
That you possess something.
How is it proof unless they find it?
Well, I'm looking for the evidence that.
That's exactly right. That's it. Just think about what, yeah.
Huh?
You're exactly right. What I'm trying to point out to you is a warrant of search is not evidence that you did something or that you own something, right?
Right. You're looking for the evidence.
Yeah, and what people have done in the Kohberger case is they've interpreted those warrants as proof that he had ties to these girls. But the warrants haven't determined that as far as we know. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay, so that means the argument that he's an incel and a stalker has no bearing in fact and no truth. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
However,
Sabrina says go ahead. She said,
I want to say that proof can show up somewhere down the road. That proof can show up somewhere down the road, but as of yet, it doesn't exist.
Well, Sabrina, answering your question, what if the facts are tampered, things added or erased? That take a lot of time and energy. Somebody would.
Those are good questions.
Somebody would find the inconsistency really quickly.
But you don't have all the facts yet. So
Yeah, this
Because
is
you don't have all the facts yet. You can only really worry about that once you have all this. When they tell you this is all that we have and you read through it, that may be a perfectly good question.
yes, exactly.
Right now, though, it's hard to consider because of the gag order and the limited amount of facts that we're given. I don't tend to always jump to corruption. I think a lot of times, like I believe Black Lives Matter, and I'm not a supporter of how they behave and the way they do things, but I am a supporter in their theology that it's an endemic system of corruption. Police, good police, will do things or turn their head to save their pension, to pay their mortgage and get their kids through college. That good people will not do something to protect themselves. So I think when a policeman or somebody gets tunnel vision, or if a cop hits somebody that he shouldn't be hitting, that it doesn't get spoken about by the guy that witnessed it because he don't want to lose his job. So I think our system is endemically corrupt that way, and that's the aspect of what I agree with when it comes to Black Lives Matter, saying it's systematic and endemic in the system. And I believe that they're actually accurate in that. That's probably the most accurate thing I've ever heard them say when they describe corruption within the police department. It isn't that you're all criminals, you're all stealing Coke money, that's not what they're saying. They're saying there's a system of corruption, and what that corruption is, silence among the troops. They all converge and protect each other. And even Detective John, when I asked him bluntly, if you do an investigation on an important case and one of your guys makes a mistake, what do you do with it? And his answer was, well, it depends on how big it was. And that's not how it's supposed to work.
Right.
It's not his job he's not judge, jury, he's a policeman. And if he sees something, a misstep or an inaccurate thing done during an investigation, he's to report it to his superior. Right?
Yes. And I believe
that's what I mean by corruption.
Based on what you said earlier, Sergeant, is, whenever some of these creators and panels, they become the judge, the prosecutors, and the jury. They want to try the case in an hour. They want to try the case in 3 hours. They want to try the case in a week without all the evidence that they really do have.
Can I give you a
the Banfield is not evidence.
Can I give you a different topic? I don't want to get into the topic, but a different example of how people's belief overwhelms their ability to think fairly. You want to hear what this is?
Okay.
The candidate Trump was convicted in New York and fined $400 and something million for some lending fiasco that went on. Okay. Mm-hmm. He did pay back all the loans, right? So, a lot of people say it was a victimless crime. Doesn't matter. You can't lie about the assessed value of your property to increase the loan amount. That's what they said he did. He got convicted. He just appealed it. And on appeal, they didn't throw the conviction out. They just reduced the fine to $175 million. And all of his supporters are running around seeing Trump was right. Trump was right. Trump won. Wait a minute. He was convicted of lying to banks. That hasn't changed.
Right.
You understand? His fine has changed, but that still tells you he's guilty of what they accused. A second court look at it. That's the topic that should be focused on. You don't run around screaming the guy won, attacking the prosecutor, which, look at, I got a legitimate reason to say, yeah, okay, so you didn't like the prosecutor, you didn't like the judge, and these are your reasons. Good, I get it. But they made a ruling, then you appealed it. The appeal only reduced your fine. Therefore, you are truly guilty of what they accused. And I think people should be more conscious of that fact, not run around attacking and making fun of the DA and acting like Trump is their savior. It's like, you people got to be out of your mind.
I mean, to be fair, people are.
Look, I'm a Trump supporter, nonetheless.
People are okay. I mean, to be fair, we are not the moral compass of society. I wish we were. I wish
society needs a moral compass, bro.
Oh, I agree. Let me finish. We are not the moral compass, but our thinking has brought about our belief system that we are so tied to that it's difficult for us to see the forest for the trees.
It's created a moral crisis. Listen, it's created a moral crisis the way we've been trained to think and use that word belief in this way. A lot of us know, and most of us don't want to know, that there's 40 million slaves that make your phone possible. In third world nations around the globe, mainly in Africa, where children of 6 years old, 5 years old, are in mines to get the minerals you need to turn on your phone. Americans don't want to know this. Americans do know this. But because it's being done by Intel or by Apple, it's not you doing it. And that's a lack of moral compass, a huge lack of moral compass, because we should not support any industry that relies upon harming human beings to exist. Worse, and even worse, folks, this is where the slap in the face you would think would wake people up. The cost to make an Apple phone is so little that for you to have to pay $1,000 for it, you need to scratch your head and your ass. They're not being made in factories $35 an hour with healthcare and vacation. They're being made in factories at $1.60 an hour.
Right.
And yet they're selling them to you at first world prices while using slave labor. And yet Americans don't question Apple. That's a crisis of morality throughout the nation because people want to argue about knowledge or information. What about arguing that rather than build a bomb, why don't we build a house? Bombs cost $1 million. You're dropping 800 of them. Why aren't we helping our vets with that money? Why are we so supportive of all this kind of chaos as a nation of people? We don't speak up as a group. We do what we do here on the internet. And this topic, stuff like this, it's deep, but it's truth. We are the ones that are supposed to defend that Constitution, not the police, not the military. It's we, the people. The people you represent are there to represent your values and your safety, and they're not. So it's your job as a people to stand up and do that. And I don't mean violently. You can do this very non-violently.
Right.
And yet we sit back and we argue whether Kohlberger did a U-turn or we see a warrant for Instagram and immediately we decide that means Kohlberger was stalking him on Instagram with no evidence to say that he did other than a warrant looking, right? We've been pushed off the rails, all of us, when it comes to how we deal with knowledge. And it's really, really allowed a massive moral crisis. Look, you were going to talk about the sex trade today. 360,000 men or women and children go missing from the border between us and Mexico every year. That's a moral crisis of a magnitude that's unimaginable. That's right here at home.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of things that go on a daily that it's almost like we don't want to get involved. And as a nation, I believe that we could do a lot more. We could do a lot more starting at home. I mean, looking in the mirror, you could do a lot more to change the world. I mean, honestly,
I'd ask President Trump this, and I bet you he'd agree. Do you believe that we should all have free health care, or we should be policing the world and bombing people we claim are enemies? Which would you prefer? For the people that argued against free health care, and I was one of them, when you really sit back and think about it, do you think that $32 trillion of debt would, if spent here at home, do you think any of these problems around the globe would exist? Do you think that if this government said you can't use slave labor on our behalf, and they spoke up and denied companies from doing that, which they used to do, we would have a better world, not just America. The better we do, the better the world does. And that's always been the truth since America was born. And the worse we do, the worse the world gets. And when we look around us, that dynamic is true because look how bad it is around the world.
Well, I'm going to have to kind of tie this up because I promised my little nephew.
You said 2 hours. Yeah.
I'd go work out with him, and it's almost that time. I'm going to do a quick poll in the chat before I thank you guys for being here and being so attentive. If you like the content that you see on my channel, press the number 1. If you want other kind of creations that we could discuss logically, intellectually on this channel, press the number 2 and give a suggestion in the community tabs. Or, just let's do it like this. If you like the channel, press the number 1. If you don't like the channel, press a 2. If you like the fact that we, as the people that I have up here on my panel at times, are very intellectual, press the number 1. How many of you are going to tell your friends to come over here and listen to it and at least give it a shot? You know, I'm not trying to get creative because I'm trying to get money. That's not what I'm doing. I want to get you guys some more people that are like minded in the chat so that you guys can have more communication with each other to kind of get the word out to hopefully make a difference in whatever way we can. Like I said, it starts in the mirror, it ends in the mirror, and it goes from there. You make a change with you, then you can make a change with other people. Oh, you put a 0, Sergeant Friday? What is up with you, man?
And then I put a 1.
You'll
Look,
never be on my chat panel again, bro.
I put a 1 up there, and then I did 0, and then I did negative 1. I was just going to do
You'll
negative 2.
never be up here again, bro. You'll never be up here again.
I just did a negative 2.
Wow.
Can I say something before you ban me for life?
Yeah, what's up?
There's a reason why there's higher learning institutions. There's a reason why there's biblical writings and there's studies and thousands of volumes of data. When you seek truth, a lie only requires the 2 letters N and O. And a lie can travel the globe thousands of times before the truth can even get its shoes put on in the morning. That's the problem in the world today. The truth is getting trampled by conspiracy theories, by people believing in nonsense and people creating stories that shouldn't be created and not paying attention to what's right and wrong when it comes to how we all are with each other. I don't love dogs more than people. I love people more than anything, even though I can be a prick. Okay. But I truly think we are an amazing, amazing species, the most amazing I've ever seen. And yet we treat each other and act and lie and do the things we do against each other. It makes no goddamn sense.
Very true. Very true. Thank you so much, Sarge, for being up here again. Thank you for the ability to bounce things off of you. The same way I'm able to do so with Jeff H. I know that we all have different opinions and things, but I love how you guys are able to, whenever you're up here, to be respectful. You're respectful to the chat. You give your honest opinion or you give your honest thoughts. I'm not going to say opinions because I don't know if they're opinions, but your honest thoughts on whatever's asked. And if you'd like to, I'd like to have you up again, Sarge, if you're good for that.
Look at my lifetime ban lasted about 45 seconds.
Oh well, I gotta get with the chat, bro. I gotta get with the chat, see if they're good with it,
No, I would love to come back and then discuss, rather than just simple true crime. Let's discuss the bigger scheme of things and maybe some ideas on how we as a group can start to change the bigger scheme of things, because it's because of us it's this way, our lack of action, right? And what actions might we be able to do as a group that can have an impact on the world? And I think America's the only place where something like that can start and actually happen.
Yeah, very true. So, well, guys in the chat, thank you so much. I love your support. It's slowly growing. Keep coming back. We're hoping to get this channel really rolling pretty good. Like I said, it's not about money. It's about camaraderie and knowledge to make a change in this world, even if it just starts with us in this little chat room, because we got to do something different because the other way's not working. And you can't just put your head in the sand and act like it's going to go away, because that's not how things are done.
Wasn't it 10 people? It starts with 1, but if you get 10 people and then grow it, I mean, everything starts out small. I don't care what it is. They had to build the first cell phone, right? There had to be one. I appreciate you having me up here. I look forward to having some conversations and debates with you. You're definitely cool, bro.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to cue the music. Those of you that are still in the chat, listen to the music on the way out, and then we're out of here. Have a good night.